but one that also prides itself immensely.
Hello. Checking that everything is intact.
Build wealth by earning 5.2% interest on your pounds. Now you can with Trading 212.
Category for me. The developer has crafted a world that is not only vast, gorgeous, and brimming with things to do as the Arisen, and it does some fascinating things with that setup to deliver a game that turns out to narratively be engaging than more than most would expect. I want to be clear, Dragon's Dogma 2 is very much not a story-focused game. There aren't a lot of cutscenes, the characters you meet aren't terribly talkative, and the storytelling happens mostly during gameplay. But the story it does tell is one that I found myself more invested in than I had actually anticipated. The game's classic medieval fantasy setting isn't one that we haven't seen countless times in the past, but what it lacks in originality, it more than makes up for in execution. From learning more about the different cultures and histories of Vermund and Batal, to getting embroiled in the political intrigue both within and between the two kingdoms, Dragon's Dogma 2 does more than enough to make its story a genuinely captivating part of the experience. But of course, the story is not the star of the show in Dragon's Dogma 2. Though sticking to the main plot will still likely be a highly enjoyable experience, that's clearly not the intended way to play this game. Dragon's Dogma 2 expects, and hell, wants you to treat it in a world that you're living in, rather than a story that's playing out just in front of you. In that sense, it very much falls in line with the sensibilities of something like the Elder Scrolls.
Alright.
The world is governed by a set of defined rules,
That's better.
like a day and night cycle or weather systems, and the effects that those things have on the environments you find yourselves in and the behavior of the enemies that lie in your path. NPCs, meanwhile, all have schedules that they follow based on the time, and all of it as the Arisen, and it and it does some fascinating things with that setup to deliver a game that as the Arisen, and it does some fascinating things with.
So this is the reviews order. The review embargo is up, and the game is about 2 days away. Yes. 2 days away. And pretty much the reviews are very, very, very favorable. Welcome to the stream, by the way, if you haven't already. Like the stream and sit back whilst we audit these reviews and take what we need to take from what the reviewers have experienced with the game, because at this point it doesn't matter how good or bad the game is. The game is so hyped, and there's just way too much good elements of this game for me not to purchase it. So this is gonna be a day one purchase for me, regardless of what these reviews or reviewers say about the game. But I was hoping to gain some new knowledge about what the game entails. So I definitely want to that's where I need to be. I definitely want to find out about the economy in the game, the purchasing of, apparently you can purchase houses, or I don't know what it is, houses or places where you can stay and stuff, which I'd assume will be really expensive. But I do want to know about that, to know to basically know what we're working towards in terms of acquiring loot. I am streaming on Twitch as well, so let me just alter that. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, so that I want to also know about, which I'm hoping we can gather information about based on the reviews that are out. Can you mix ingredients when cooking? Or is it just simply you get a steak from killing a certain monster or beast meat or whatever, just like in Dogma 1, and you just cook that raw and that's it? You can't like mix or combine food elements to cook different types of meals or dishes. I want to find out about that. Any information about the Sphinx or other mythical creatures in the game? Definitely want to find out about that. And what else? I'm going to be playing the Thief first. That's going to be most likely my favorite vocation. I'd like to know more details or information about the Warfarer, because it's going to be Warfarer, Mystic Spearhand, and the Thief are going to be my prime vocations. Because in my mind, I definitely want to try and, with the Warfarer, for example, I want to use Mystic Spearhand. This is what one of the first things I want to try and do as soon as I'm able to do it. Do a combo with Mystic Spearhand, then the Star Wars Force move to push them away. As they're getting pushed away, I want to switch to the Thief to whip them, bring them back with the tether, and then execute them, and then switch to a mage and then burn them. I want to know how quickly you can interchange between vocations if you're the warfarer. Not sure if we'll get that much information about that, but we shall see. What else? I'm using the PlayStation 5, by the way, to do this. Trying to think, what other things is there? The clothing, I do want to know about the fashion, what kind of items you can get, what type of prices they're likely to be at. And off the top of my head, those are the things that come to mind that I want to learn from these reviews. So, without further ado, let's get this going. So this is from GameBot.
That's set up to deliver a game that turns out to narratively be engaging than more than most would expect. I want to be clear, Dragon's Dogma 2 is very much not a story-focused game. There aren't a lot of cutscenes, the characters you meet aren't terribly talkative, and the storytelling...
See, I don't really care too much about
but the story it
how
does tell
talkative
is
they
one
are,
I found myself more
or even the
interested in than I had actually anticipated. The game's classic
game that much
fantasy
in
setting
terms
is
of
one that we haven't seen
the
countless
story,
times in
the
past,
gameplay,
but what it lacks in originality is
and
more than makes
how
it for an
the
execution.
story
From learning
is
more about the different
progressing
cultures and histories of
within the
Peru
game and the
Natal,
journey is
getting
more important to
embroiled in
me.
the political intrigue both within and between the two kingdoms. Dragon's Dogma 2 does more than enough to make its story a genuinely captivating part of the experience. But of course, the story is not the star of the show in Dragon's Dogma 2. Though sticking to the main plot will still likely be a highly enjoyable experience, that's clearly not the intended way to play this game. Dragon's Dogma 2...
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The journey is probably as important as the story itself. The story isn't really something that does it for me. It's just a heroic type of a story. It's nothing that crazy. And the thing with Capcom is they have this obsession with possessing characters through using their heart a lot. So, for example, you had Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 5. She had the pendant on her heart, or in the center of her heart. Who else? In Devil May Cry, I think the same thing happened there. I can't remember what happened, but it happened there, happens here, and there's another game that Capcom did where I think Akuma or someone in Street Fighter has their powers that come from, I don't know, maybe it's the Hadou, I don't know. But the story isn't, it's not going to be a big focus to me here.
And hell wants you to treat it in a world that you're living in, rather than a story that's playing out just in front of you, to providing guidance.
Let's
or
get to
holding
more
your hand
juicy
in any way,
parts.
to the extent that some might actually find it intimidating. Things that you might take for granted in most other games are actively eschewed here, from waypoints and quest boards to dynamic markers and even a second save file. Quests are often time-bound, which means ignoring them for too long will see them ending in failure. You can easily lose max XP that can then only be recovered by resting at inns or campsites. Your Your inventory is quite limited.
So, as you said, you can rest at inns, and I want to know if you can purchase inns.
Which means you become over encumbered easily,
And this is what I mean by the inventory. When you have all kinds of fish, fruit, vegetables, can you combine and mix them to make ingredients?
often. There's no lock-on mechanic, and even fast travel is extremely limited. It's a game with a very strongly defined and specific vision for what sort of an open world experience it wants to be, and it sticks to that vision uncompromisingly. But though Dragon's Dogma 2's reluctance to gamify itself or explain its many interweaving systems can give it the impression of being a highly niche and unapproachable experience, the game is actually surprisingly intuitive. Though there certainly are times when some of its systems can feel a bit too obscure, especially during certain quests that don't do a great job of indicating whether or not they're alluding to specific systems and styles of play, by and large, things in the game work the way you'd think they should. Sure, you don't have any text in the UI that's telling you where to go, or a marker on the map that's pointing you to the exact thing you're supposed to interact with to advance the quest, or a compass that acts like a GPS straight to your destination. But more often than not, the diegetic elements of Dragon's Dogma 2 make those things feel more and almost entirely unnecessary.
See, all of this is exactly another thing that I like about the game. It feels more natural when there's not indicators, not just on the screen, but in the environment. You kind of have to figure things out yourself and kind of do like investigative type of work to accomplish things and achieve them. And that is what is tied with the journey of the game, which I like a lot.
If you're paying attention to what quest givers tell you, to the brief tidbits that the quest log contains, or to things that are happening in your surroundings, chances are that you're going to find a way to progress. As such, figuring out even the simplest and most mundane of things feels significantly more rewarding than it would in most other massive open world RPGs. It feels almost like a more approachable version of Elden Ring in that regard. Even when you're not following quests, there's endless fun to be had in the Dragon's Dogma 2's open world sandbox. The world feels truly dangerous every step of the way, especially if you find yourself outside of a settlement at nighttime, when the darkness is so oppressive you can barely see past your feet, and keeps finding ways to
So all of this is things that we've already known, especially if you played Dragon's Dogma 1, about venturing off at night. It could be quite intimidating, but for the challenge, it's really interesting. It's really good. It's fun.
keep you on your toes. Every journey in the game feels like an actual journey, and it always lets you decide how to deal with the many threats that you encounter along the way. Exploration also feels immensely rewarding, not only because of the emergent moments you so frequently find yourself in, but because the material mechanical rewards you get feel incredibly valuable as well. Leveling up, unlocking new skills, earning more currency, or finding new materials might be things that you do in virtually every RPG that has ever existed, but Dragon's Dogma 2 makes them feel significantly more meaningful by economizing and balancing those elements perfectly, and constantly toes the line between being stringent in how many rewards it's giving out and not being so stringent that it starts feeling actively hostile. And then, of course, there's the combat, which is one of the game's biggest strengths. Every combat encounter in Dragon's Dogma 2 feels incredible to be involved in. There's a vast variety of enemies to be found across its massive world, coming in all manner of different shapes and across its entire roster of beasts and monstrosities. It helps, too, that the vast majority of the enemies you fight in the game pose genuine threat in distinct ways, which means you won't often find yourself in combat scenarios that you can just button mash your way through. Whether it's a band of orcs that swarms you in numbers, a griffin that uses its immense talons and wings to its deadly advantage, or a troll that tries to squish you under its gigantic club, there aren't too many enemies in the game that you can just coast past. Taking those foes on in combat feels excellent in a number of different reasons. Even on
So, I was just about to say, this is another important thing about the game that I want to know. The different types of enemies. Is there more than what we've already seen? And if so, how much more? I'm pretty sure the difficulty on them are going to be perfectly fine. They're going to be hard as they should be and easy when they should be. But the variety of new and unique monsters is something I'm keen to find out more on, because they've shown a few here.
On the most fundamental level, the simple act of using weapons and moving about the battlefield feels responsive and engaging. Every action feels deliberate, visceral, and punchy in a way that's so crucial to an action-focused game such as this one. Meanwhile, there are, of course, plenty of bells and whistles thrown on top of all that as well. Primarily, there's the grabbing and climbing mechanic, which allows you to latch on to larger enemies and start clambering across their bodies, Shadow of the Colossus style. No matter how much time you put into the game, it's just never going to get old. There's nothing quite like holding on to an ogre's fur for dear life while it frantically leaps around like a creature possessed, or standing on a dragon's back and stabbing in the head with a sword while it spits fire on the ground beneath it in agony. The pawns, too, are a vital part of combat. In addition to one main pawn that you can create early on in the game, you can also temporarily recruit 2 others made by other players. And finding the right composition for your party in terms of both what vocations your pawns adhere to.
That's another point. That's another important thing I want to know. When you make your main arisen and your main pawn, can you recruit your own other created pawns? Because we're essentially recruiting, choosing between 5 main pawns, but what I want is to choose all of them, or 4, however you're meant to have. I really want to know how that goes, because if it's just 1, I think that's how it was in Dragon's Dogma 1. But I want to know how many of the pawns that you've created you can use at one time, or is it just 1 at a time?
And what their unique personality traits are can change combat in significant ways. So much of Dragon's Dogma 2 is about the joy of witnessing different autonomous systems interacting with each other to produce surprising results. And when you throw pawns into the equation, that gets cranked up to 11. The aforementioned vocations also contribute to the sheer variety and mechanical depth of the combat in massive ways. At the outset, you can choose between 4 vocations, while there are also plenty others to be unlocked throughout the rest of the experience. Each of them allows you to use different weapon types and comes with unique mechanics and attributes, which in turn means they all feel radically different from one another to play as. Finding the right vocation for you and your preferred style of taste. They're certainly noticeable, but very rarely have I encountered something that breaks immersion or impedes progress in any meaningful way. It helps that by and large, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a gorgeous looking game, with both stellar art design and impressive tech working together to craft a world that's brimming with beautiful sights and vistas. Running at 4K and an uncapped 30 frames per second, it's also mostly a pretty stable experience. Though I've encountered some performance dips here and there, none of them have been too major. That said, it is
In terms of the performance, I'm not fazed by it at all. It's never been a thing that I made a big debate about, to be honest. As long as it's somewhat stable. Because I've come from gaming in the 90s. Actually, not in the 90s. Early 2000, late 90s. Whenever N64 was out, just think around that time. And to me, if you're playing a game and you break the game in a way that the frames are affected. It's a good feeling. It's like you're so superior at beating the crap out of a boss or a lot of enemies that the game starts stuttering. Like, that's what I've always seen it as. So I don't really care about that kind of thing. The only things I care about is the overall performance. Like, it doesn't freeze or the load times are ridiculous, or there's pop-ins, clippings, things like that is what gets me. Besides the frame rate is last. That's just like a beneficial positive thing to have if the game has it. And also them having it at an uncapped 30 frames per second, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that means they could update the game in a later patch to make it to increase it, or to make it 60 frames per second, like games such as The Last of Us 2 remake.
A stellar combat system that can make even the most mundane encounters feel like scripted, adrenaline-fueled set pieces, and
I really can't wait to play this. I'll be playing it for a week straight because I will be traveling soon, so I want to get as much out of the game as I can. In fact, I'll be playing it for 5 days straight. So yeah. Okay, so they gave it a 10.
Dragon's Dogma 2 knows exactly what kind of game it wants to be, and it's going to be that kind of game whether or not you like it.
I'm surprised.
You're going to absolutely love it.
And I'm surprised it's just a straight bold 10, because usually there's like some things that was, that would prevent it from getting a 10, but they gave it a 10. So that is really interesting. I kind of don't want to watch the videos that are too long. I kind of want the ones that just get to the point. Like, we gotta do IGN, for example. Let's do it. IGN. Here we go. Look at that. Nice 10-minute video. Let's see what we can get from here.
In a way, Dragon's Dogma 2 reminds me of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2, which was more of a remake of his first cult classic comedy horror movie.
Okay.
The much bigger budget allowed Raimi to really dial in his
Let's watch this,
for Ash's Bad
and then I'll give my thoughts afterwards. Unless there's something significant to check out.
A cult classic of its own over the past decade, keeping its second-to-none action design and vague but robust and alluring world as its centerpieces. Like the 2012 original, it is unforgiving out of the gate thanks to brutal enemies and chaotic encounters that are not designed to gradually ease you in. It's also high levels of janky. All of its systems seem precariously fitted together with the fragility of a well-pruned Jenga tower. Yet, remarkably, it never falls over, and its open-ended design allows for a barely controlled chaos that makes some of its inconveniences almost feel intentional. Almost. This vast, new, dark fantasy world is dense with unbeaten paths to wander down and secrets to find. Many of these will never make themselves known to you if you don't go out of your way to look for them.
Well done, Arisen One.
Early on, simply walking from quest point to quest point through the verdant forests or dusty crags is a huge risk, as the wilds of Dragon's Dogma 2 are filled with creatures who would love to make you lunch. While lots of open world games with day-night cycles stress the dangers of venturing out when the moon is high, I don't know of any other game that has a more brutal night than this one.
Wake up! We're being raided. Careful now.
The explicit lack of waypoints and map markers for the side stories really helps nail the feeling that you aren't simply a walking task bot for the world's NPCs to wind you up, but a curious member of a living, breathing place that will march on valiantly whether you find what you're looking for or not. You'll be doing lots of backtracking and exploring on foot, as there is very little way of convenient fast traveling. In the first few hours, having any squabble evolve into a rolling melee with every other beast within a square mile became annoyingly commonplace. Skirmishing goblins trying to keep their distance from you and harass you at range might attract the attention of an ogre who now must mosh through the combat, and in turn this attracts the eye of a griffin to dive bomb the encounter like a feathery wrecking ball.
Continue our onslaught and the behemoth will soon topple.
It's a tough learning curve, but it eventually gives way to a rewarding feeling of a stronger, smarter you walking through a valley that gave you heartache 10 hours ago and navigating it like a well-oiled machine. This dynamism is present in Dragon's Dogma 2's story and quests as well. I wouldn't call the main story at large that remarkable. You play as the
not too
immortal
keen
chosen one
about the story.
who has their heart stolen by a dragon that you will be forced to slay one day in order to save the world.
You but fell that fiend.
So the dragon makes you the chosen one, yet you've got to kill
with
it.
a bit of a Game of Thrones-esque
Kind of.
the political intrigue that is good, if not all that special in a world where every fantasy story has similar influences. But on a couple of occasions, Dragon's Dogma
Ironic
takes a major turn
or
and
hypocritical,
upends
I don't know.
what you've come to know and expect so far.
I like
The
that
characters themselves
Game of Thrones
something to
influence on the
love
story
even
though.
outside
That
of
would be the
archetype.
only intriguing part of the story I'll be interested in,
First time you
since
walk into
I'm
the city,
a
you'll be
huge Game of
bombarded with
Thrones
people
fan.
happy to see such a capable-looking problem solver in their midst. Many of the quests that they offer you are pretty mundane RPG fare, but some at least put a twist on the genre staples by adding time limits or unclear consequences. Yes, you just got 3 quests at once,
Interesting.
but if one involves saving a kid from a pack of wolves, the clock is ticking down until he becomes dinner, so you'd best prioritize accordingly.
So everyone keeps using the pack of wolves, kid needs to be rescued as a thing, and that can't be the only thing, if that makes sense. Like, is that the only quest that everyone keeps coming up with, or keeps running into, or keeps getting offered and accepting? Pack of wolves, kid, save. Like, I want to know. I want to know what other types of quests they are, and what time constraints are on those quests, or what consequences you get from them. We get it. If you don't save the person in time, the person will die. Cool, we get that.
Arisen is accompanied by a pawn, a sort of personal NPC sidekick whose purpose is to assist you on your journey. Pawns are invaluable because they can take on a class, which Dragon's Dogma calls vocations, and be another body in battle.
Harpies, master. 'Tis weak to fire.
Outside of fights, they're great for tasks like gathering resources and pointing out things of note in your surroundings. They did all these things in the original game as well, but new specializations can highlight harvesting spots in your map, organize the party's inventory, or even craft on their own, which means they can add so much more value this time around.
Yeah, the paws are
But
valuable,
I find to good use.
legitly
Pawns can be sent off to join
powerful
other players on
and
their adventures, learn from their experiences, and bring back items
helpful.
and knowledge to share with you. This clever asynchronous multiplayer system was groundbreaking in 2012 and feels just as innovative in 2024 because there's still not much out there like it. They aren't always a boon though. I'd never want to leave Shelter without one, but thanks to inconsistent AI, pawns can get themselves into all sorts of trouble.
Thank you, Master.
They often get isolated by enemies and picked off, which means you need to run to their unconscious bodies to revive them, or they'll poof out of your world. I've had pawns die in pretty silly ways, mostly by falling off of narrow bridges because they made the terrible choice to fight in the middle of them.
See, I wonder how much
Command them to help
damage
you,
that
wait in place, etc.
caused.
But these orders are finicky, and they'll take their sweet, agonizing time to follow them.
Defend the Arisen.
I'm definitely gonna alter my
Usually pawns are
DualSense
at least
Edge
competent,
controller
and they ensure that combat is
back
clean in
buttons
Dragon's
to
Dogma.
the
Within
appropriate
clicks, it is peerless
things.
among action RPG contemporaries. The swinging, shooting, and chopping feels solid and satisfying every time you make contact. How you fight naturally depends on your vocation, and fans of this series will be relieved to find out that other than separating the melee and ranged portions of the old Strider class into two separate options,
I kind of can't
turning
believe this game
vocations
is
are just
actually
as excellent
almost
and
out.
diverse
So it's
as
gonna be
they
so
were in the
epic,
previous game.
really epic.
Expressive animations and skill diversity ensure that even if a vocation
Okay, this
has
is a different
singular
type of
role
enemy.
it can play in battle, there's more than one way to play it. Of the new vocations, the Mystic Spearhand is my favorite. It
Yeah, that seems to be
prioritizes
everyone's
distance
favorite.
and burst offense over impenetrable defense.
But it just looks really, really cool.
Now, the Trickster uses illusions and deceptions to make enemies fight each other. And for my money, is the "you smoke too tough, your swag too different" meme in physical form.
We must do whatever we can to
I don't get that.
No
But
matter
the
your
Trickster
vocation,
could be
there's a
really,
huge Monster Hunter influence on
really
combat as
handy.
well, appropriately since a chunk of the combat design team at Capcom works on both series. Large monsters and even smaller ones have many possible targets of interest on their body, like a Cyclops' eye or a Saurian's tail. Targeting them could do more damage, stun them more regularly, or take that limb off, completely altering the enemy's attack patterns and possibly granting more loot. I rejoice in how impactful choosing to spend the effort to take these kinds of advantages always felt, especially when you're fighting groups of big enemies and need to thin the herd quickly.
Okay, that was weird.
On the other hand, I don't approve of how janky climbing enemies feels, something you'll be doing often to bring larger foes down to size. It's easy
The thing
to
is,
get
it was like that in
disoriented
Dragon's
when
Dogma
climbing
1.
through no real fault of your own, and if the monster jumps into a corner or pressures you against the wall, the camera reveals itself as having been the true villain all along, making it absolutely impossible to see what's going on for as long as you're stuck there. More than once I have taken big damage or even died because I was body blocked by my foes, and that has never been a good way for a fight to end. Even if
That
I'm
is
not
funny.
getting bullied out of the shot, as the numbers of the combatants pick up, you can watch the frame rate slowly diminish. Not ideal for a game where success in combat can be so heavily dependent on timing your attacks, blocks, and dodges. Never got too bad for me, but it was noticeably chuggy, which made a game that can be hard to read due to all the things going on
I wonder if
screen
it's
at once,
glitched.
just that much more illegible.
That'd be cool. Get free damage. So what is their
Dragon's
verdict?
Dogma 2 is a strange and wonderful game that seems haunted by some of yesteryear's bugaboos. It is a retelling and re-implementation of all of those wonderful ideas from the 2012 cult classic, including an awesome dynamic world and some of the best combat in the genre. On the other hand, its finicky ally AI, clunky climbing, choppy frame rate, and camera with a habit of going haywire at the worst times are all features I wish hadn't been brought back for another round. Even so, there is an action RPG here that is richly rewarding and incomparable to its contemporaries if you can be patient with its quirks and open to embracing
An
its
8.
hands-off.
Interesting. So we had a 10 from GameBot and an 8 from IGN. Interesting. So that means right now we're looking at a 9. This game is exceptional. From an 8 to a 9. From a 10 to an 8, which leaves us at 9. Might check game ranks, but who next to check out? I wonder if Eurogamer did a review. Oh, this is a nice short review. Let's check this one out.
Heard about Eats and Beats? The supper club that combines food and music. They got a GoDaddy.
12 years after the release of Dragon's Dogma, Capcom and director
Okay.
Hideaki Itsuno
Okay, we just want to get to
for a
the...
modern audience. Don't get me wrong, this is still very much an unforgiving game that leaves you to figure everything
Get a bit
take over
more
the kingdom
into the...
for herself, while you're left slaving away in the mines. The basics
To the point.
of healing, crafting,
All right.
and heavy and light attacks. Then once you make it to the city of Vernworth, the world is your oyster. You're free to do whatever you want, take on quests in any order you wish, and this is where the fun begins. While most modern video games are happy to give you objective markers to lead you to exactly where you need to go, Dragon's Dogma 2 prefers to be as opaque as possible. A random villager might run up on you, for example, and ask you why
Okay,
the town
these-
beggar seems to be living above his means. And that's it. That's all the direction you're getting.
These clips are
Like most open world games where fast
already been played.
highlight of Dragon's Dogma 2. This game is the epitome of emergent gameplay, where there's no telling what you're going to run into each time you leave the comforts of the city. I can't count the number of times I've strayed off the
What we need is a review with new gameplay at least. Did they do a
So Ali
review?
has been playing Dragon's Dogma 2 for us, and yeah, some
Did they do a review? Don't think they did. Interesting. I would have thought they did. I'm also really curious. Hey Leon, what's good? Welcome. How long is Dragon's Dogma? I don't know how long it is, but it's as long as you make
Ali has
it.
been playing Dragon's Dogma.
Dragon's Dogma is as long as you make it. Let's see this review. Is there new footage?
Build wealth every day with the Trading 212 ISA. The only stocks and shares ISA giving you 5.2% interest on your cash.
The opening 10 or so hours of Dragon's Dogma 2 feel like
Oh, thanks, Leon.
particularly challenging. And by the way, there are no difficulty options, at least for your first playthrough, so we'll all be having the same experience difficulty-wise. The game starts you out with a very
All right.
limited moveset. Just
They
to
have
your
some
right,
new footage in
attacks
that
plus a
video.
couple of default
Oh, which
special
video?
moves for your vocation.
The one I was just on?
Fighting goblins, harpies, and wolves for quite some time.
Because I want to go through
A mini-boss here and
just new footage,
Now,
really.
that said, the combat at
Because
the
there's
start is
certain
easily
things that I
the
mentioned
slowest
in the
point
beginning of the
besides
stream
because
that I want to look out
opening
for.
up
I want to
with
look out for
more
how much it
and
costs
more
to buy
repetitive
ins
and
or
after
properties
51
if you
hours,
can.
I I am seeing zero signs of
Um,
slowing down.
oh,
with
the
just
drag-
my one
the-
vocation, of which there are 10
The
total,
Sphinx.
including the
Any
Sphinx
information
vocation.
on that?
You can switch vocations at inns you'll find at settlements, though.
The IGN
Before
video
you
is
down, your
about 12
character has
minutes.
both a standard rank,
We can go back to
basic
it if you
stats,
want.
and also a vocation rank that's tied to unlocking new.
But they gave it an interesting
If you switch,
score.
you'll still have your strength, defense, carry weight, etc. stats.
Okay, this is new footage.
Your moveset is going back to basics. Overall, though, I found the gameplay progression.
So,
class opens up from very
yeah.
basic beginnings to something far more complex to be extremely satisfying.
Definitely.
The combat itself, like when you're in
Definitely,
action, is solid, but I will say that the more unique boss battles, the ones that require teamwork, are easily the highlights, far and away the highlights. Because one criticism you are going to hear a lot is that this game is fairly lacking in basic enemy variety.
Oh, no.
Wolves and harpies, because for the first 25, 30 hours or so, that is all you'll be seeing. And I'm not exaggerating for effect, that is all you'll be seeing outside of the occasional mini.
See, I don't know.
Maybe some aggressive slime in a cave. And for the record, the mini bosses
I don't know
too, although those never really got old to me, at least not yet.
if that will bother me that much. The variety. As long as there's enough variety.
Down a bit, because if you're planning on playing this, I guarantee you that there will be times
As long as there's newer monsters and creatures we haven't seen from the previews leading up to the launch of the game.
Anything other than 14 identical packs of goblins. I'm not saying you won't run into any content, but just enemy-wise, it's a lot of grunt patrols. And that's hardly a problem exclusive to Dragon's Dogma 2, but the combat system here has so much more to it than damn near any other game out there that you really want to unleash both yourself and your pawns on something exciting, but instead you often have to settle for a couple hours of slaughtering goblins before you get anywhere good. And to be
Okay,
honest,
so it
killing
does
grunt
change
enemies does not require
the deeper you
anything
get
worth the
into the
bosses do,
game.
and you'll get by just fine hacking away at them if that's how you want to play. Speaking of pawns, though, well, they're kind of a big deal and deserve their own section, especially because one of them is almost as important as you.
Yeah.
Game start just after you create your own character, you'll be prompted to create a second. That being
See, now I'm also intrigued about the character creation that they gave us as the demo. In the actual game, is there actually more character created options in the game? If not, I don't really care as much because I've already spent hours on creating my characters. So, like, I'm very much ready for this game. Very, very much ready for this game. I think it was such a good strategy to release the demo as a character creator because people like myself spend a lot of time on just that before actually playing the game. Plus, they put a lot of detail in their character creation, so I'm really happy about that.
Probably not the most tactical idea, but I like the thought of it. And the rest of your 4-player party is made up of rental pawns.
See?
The main sticks with you from game start to end and levels up.
So that's it. So now that he's confirmed it, you create your own Arisen main character. Cool. You create a main pawn. Cool. But the other pawns are all rental. I wanted to see if you can rent your own other created pawns
alongside you, but the rentals are very different and very disposable. You can find them absolutely anywhere. They wander the open world and can also be hired using a rift, which is essentially a pawn rental center. Plus, interacting with those rifts also resurrects your main pawn should they die. What's really fun about the rentals, though, is that, for the most part, they are the primary pawns of other players. So what you're seeing at the rifts are pawns designed by the community. And because of that, your primary pawn can also be hired out. That doesn't mean they'll ever disappear from your squad, but you might wake up after camping and hear them comment about how they went on some adventure without you.
Yeah, they did that in Dragon's Dogma 1. So I'm just wondering, at least could I swap out my main pawn with another one of my main pawns? Can you do that?
Tad incautious in my travels this time. A horde of goblins got the better of me, if you can believe it.
During combat and exploration especially, the pawn system has
I wonder if they're just
to
making
it.
that up or if that
Combat
really
itself is
happened
more about preparation and
per
every
adventure they
squad's
go on.
abilities complement each other, something your primary pawn will even comment on if you're doing a good or poor job of, whereas exploration is where the system really shines. Every pawn has various traits, and depending on what they specialize in, they might be able to help with a quest, or you might be traveling through an area and your rental will mention how they'd already been through that area with their master, and they
Interesting.
can be found. And if you give
That's
them a go-ahead
interesting.
using one of the
Pretty
pawn
cool.
commands on the D-pad, they'll take you right to that treasure. That's not something you can consistently
What did he just say? That was some
on the D-pad,
interesting.
They'll take you right to
That was some interesting information.
on what they specialize in, they might be able to help with a quest, or you might be traveling through an area and your rental will mention how they'd already been through that area with their master.
Right.
They know where treasure can be found. And if you give them a go-ahead using one of the pawn commands on the D-pad, they'll take you right to that treasure. That's not something you can consistently rely upon, but it's neat when it happens. The main drawback to the pawns really just comes back to an echoed complaint from the first game, and
See, that's another thing. I'm definitely going to essentially, since I'm using the DualSense Edge controller with the back buttons, what I'm thinking to do is make my back buttons the pawns. So anything involved with the pawns and actions to do with the pawns is my back buttons. So in my head, anything to do with the pawn's actions or even commands or anything like that will be the back buttons. My main buttons will be for my main character, and controlling my main character, and the D-pad will be potentially more pawn stuff. Who knows?
that's the fact that they never shut up.
Different combinations of materials result in different creations.
For every one
In Big Time, you can collect Big Time cryptocurrency. It's real fun and easy. You can collect the Big Time token.
For every one extremely cool moment, there will be 5 or more where one of your pawns just says the most useless thing you've ever heard. I mean, right on topic, if you don't have a pawn that specializes in something related to your quest, then get ready to hear your pawn mention every 5 seconds that you could hire someone else if you need help, and they won't stop repeating that suggestion until you go into the menu and set another quest as your priority, because most of the time you won't need help.
They still haven't, or we still haven't found any more information about the currency.
You'll get this same repeated double comment where one of the pawns says, "This item is generally used as a material," which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. No shit, this item is used as a material. But the quote isn't over because it's always tied to a second line where one of the other pawns will say, "Different combinations of items results in different creations." And
They're just like more so
thinking,
reminders.
yeah, I could have figured out for myself that if I mixed a grape and a cranberry together, it'd give me a different result than a hunk of copper and a stick. Other than the constant chatter, though, the pawns are pretty cool, though I've noticed they're prone to throwing themselves off of cliffs from time to time, though who isn't? I also loved how after a battle, you'd often high-five your pawns, and if you fell from a great height and one of your party happened to be below you, then they would catch you to stop any damage.
Oh, that's sick.
And more broadly speaking than just the pawns,
So they have like
full to the brim,
initiative.
nice little moments like that. To speak on some of the less nice moments, though, I promised to talk about bugs and performance.
They seem to have
One of those two categories,
some
unfortunately,
spontaneousness
where
about them,
Dragon's
which
Dogma
is
2
really
falls
interesting.
short. In the bug department, if I'd been sent a code a little later and had only made it, say, 25 hours in, then I probably would have said Dragon's Dogma 2 was near bug-free in my experience, because I had nothing major go wrong up until that point. Then, though, I had a major side quest completely break. I just couldn't talk to the NPC required to end the quest. He only had his shop dialogue available, so I've been stuck with that quest in my log for nearly 30 hours at this point. That's an ongoing situation. And directly after that quest broke, and I mean directly afterwards, I had another side quest break, where the NPC I needed to speak to just disappeared entirely. Although that one did fix itself when I left the area.
Oh, that's annoying.
And returned to where I'd initially met the NPC, at which point the quest just started all over again like I'd never spoke to him in the first place. After that, though, I've then gone another 20 plus hours with no bugs whatsoever, so if it weren't for that one very frustrating session, I'd have no complaints. The same cannot be said for this game's performance. And I will be crystal clear
here we go
here.
again.
Overall, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a game I'm loving, and I say I'm loving as an ongoing.
Not really that interested about the performance.
Dragon's Dogma 2 would magically transform from a PS5 game into a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, maybe it wasn't quite that bad, but frame rates in the low 20s were common, and is that really what we want to endorse? Are we really wanting to go down that road and say that?
Okay, get to the point. I want to know the verdict.
Well, that is all for today. If you enjoyed this review, consider leaving a like.
Okay, no verdict. So let's see. Oh, GameSpot. Did we do GameSpot? Oh, I did. We did GameBot, but not GameSpot. All right.
This is Tamor Hussain reading for reviewer Richard Wakeling. Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't have a traditional fast travel system. For most open world,
Alright.
this would be a death sentence, an affront to the player's valuable time. Yet somehow, Capcom has turned the absence of this quality of life feature into a resounding strength. It's the game's tremendous sense of adventure and discovery that accomplishes this. Every time you leave the
Appreciate the followers,
village
by the
or
way,
city,
as well.
there's no telling what will happen.
Thanks.
You just know it has the potential to be
Appreciate
spellbinding
it.
and will be well worth your time.
Welcome to the stream, Dave Jack 22.
As a sequel, Dragon's Dogma 2 is an extension of everything the first game achieved 12 years ago. It's an enchanting open-world RPG with varied, exciting combat and a player-created companion system that's unlike anything else. It doesn't do too much beyond what the original did, but advancements in technology have enhanced its anomalous strengths, breathing new life into its massive open world and the way in which you and everything around you can interact with it. New ideas and innovation might not be at the forefront, but the things it does are still relatively distinct. After a brief but intriguing prologue, your adventure begins in the country of Vermund, a land of lush green forests, alpine peaks, and the flowing currents of its many winding rivers. The royalty and noblemen of Vermund reside behind the fortified walls of its capital city, and it's from this bustling location that you can board an ox cart to a small village in the north or a checkpoint city in the west. The latter sits on the border with Batal, an arid land home to the humanoid cat-like Beastren, where gondolas provide an occasional route over the craggy canyons below. Beyond traveling via ox cart or climbing aboard one of these skylifts, you're left to explore the sprawling world on foot, traversing dense forests blanketed by canopies that blot out the sun, elven ruins carved into the sides of mountains, and shifting sands bathed in harsh sunlight and circled by deadly harpies. There is a method of instant fast travel available, but it works in much the same way as it did in the first game. You can exhaust a costly resource known as fairy stones.
Yeah, we know that.
Challenging you with enormous beasts to topple, or piquing your curiosity with a cave tucked away to the side of the main pathway. I once embarked on a lengthy journey that began with the usual ambushes from resourceful goblins and roadside bandits. I thought a first encounter with the three-headed magic-wielding chimera would be the most noteworthy part of this venture.
Ooh.
For a monstrous griffin to swoop down and introduce an entirely new set of problems. After hatting at the chimera's wailing goat head until it eventually collapsed in defeat, I focused all of my attention on the fearsome griffin. The immense force of this mighty creature made the nearby foliage rustle and shake every time it reared back and flapped its wings, but I managed to clamber on top of the beast and dig my sword into the back of its skull before it launched into the air and sent me spiraling to the floor. After a time, the griffin made its escape, retreating back to the skies above, so I spent the night camping to recuperate my depleted health bar. I set out again in the morning, only to be interrupted by the same griffin, presumably with a newly formed vendetta against me. This time, after much hardship, I defeated the mythical creature before it could flee again.
I'd follow the griffin.
Yet my journey was far from over. A pair of colossi sprang an
To the
unpredictable
nest.
attack in the confines between two rocky outcrops, while the next night brought about a horde of undead skeletons whose eyes pierced the suffocating darkness. None of these encounters related to one another or pertained to the quest I initially set out on, but that's the magic of Dragon.
Okay.
The game slowing down to let you bask in your most impactful strikes, while enemies burst into flames and tumble off cliff sides behind the power of the sorcerer's stave. There's a hint of Devil May Cry to its most stylish and over-the-top moves, and hacking away at colossal beasts with slow but purposeful blows can't help but bring to mind the protracted battles of Monster Hunter. Even when you're swirling through the air and conjuring piercing ice shards, the combat still feels grounded, thanks to the world reacting realistically to everything that consuming it. Your ultimate goal is to take up arms and slay the dragon, but before that can happen,
Okay, it's just story stuff.
the Beastren Nation casts the Arisen as an outsider, fearful as they are of your entourage of pawns and the misfortune they portend. Much like the first game, these user-created companions are the game's most exceptional feature. Up to 3 pawns can join you on your journey, though one is a permanent fixture and your creation. You can set their vocation and change it as you see fit, equipping skills and upgrades for them just as you would your own character. The other 2 members of your party are hirelings you can recruit and replace on a whim,
I
typically
see.
created by other players. Choosing which pawn to hire primarily comes down to a matter of party composition. Whether they're leading from the front, imbuing your weapons with magic, or blanketing the battlefield in meteors, it's hard not to love the impact they have on combat. But there's also more to them than simply being hired guns. The time a pawn spends with other players is retained in their memory. They might recall a treasure chest they opened in another Arisen's world and then lead you to it, and they do the same when it comes to navigating quests as well. If you prioritize an objective and one of your pawns has completed it before, they'll offer to lead you wherever it is you need to go. Rather than being weighed down by having to constantly revisit the map, you can let a pawn naturally guide you, creating an ebb and flow to your adventure that removes the need for menu screens and waypoints. They can sometimes lose their way when you're interrupted by combat, but I found that hitting the go command would reset them back on the right path. Pawns perform a similar function after defeating a certain number of particular enemies too. If a pawn has significant experience beating, say, an ogre, they'll relay pertinent information on weak points and the nature of their attacks. You can also find and then equip different specializations for your pawn, maybe granting them the ability to translate Elvish or forage for materials so you don't have to bother. They can still be overly loquacious at times, expressing childlike wonder at the world with a barrage of ye olde English dialogue.
If 'twasn't for the crick in my neck.
Keep gazing upward and you're like to stumble ere long.
The remarks are nowhere near as repetitive as before though, and they're much more personable this time around, chatting amongst themselves about other players they've travelled with and creating a palpable sense of teamwork and camaraderie. The most noticeable misstep derives from Dragon's Dogma 2's performance on PC. My current rig exceeds the recommended specifications, aside from the CPU, and the game generally runs at around 60 frames per second using the game's high preset. Sometimes it dips into the 40s and drops even lower inside villages and cities, but it's certainly playable, if a little unstable. The problem is that this performance...
I gotta listen to that again. What did he say?
PC. My current rig exceeds the recommended specifications.
Wait, this video was captured on Xbox Series X.
They've traveled with and
Now, what did he
created a palpable
say?
sense of teamwork and camaraderie. The most noticeable misstep derives from Dragon's Dogma 2's performance on PC. My current rig exceeds the recommended specifications, aside from the CPU. And the
So he's
game
talking about
generally
PC.
runs at around 60 frames per second using the game's high preset. Sometimes it dips into the 40s and drops even lower inside villages and cities, but it's certainly playable, if a little unstable. The problem is that this performance is consistent across all visual settings, which leads me to believe it's a matter of poor optimization. I could have used a performance bump from lowering shadow quality and the like, but doing so has no effect. Ideally, this will be rectified with a day one patch and driver updates, but it's not ideal at the time of writing. Even so, these performance issues did little to deter my love for this game. It's not often that a cult classic gets the green light for a sequel, especially 12 years after the original game was released. Capcom hasn't tried to make Dragon's Dogma 2 more palatable to potentially attract a wider audience either. It stuck to the first game's core values and expanded upon them to create a bigger and better game that consistently delights in its approach to seamless exploration and the thrill of adventure. This means it feels very familiar in a lot of ways. but it's a game for those who fell in love with the original, despite its flaws, and will hopefully find an entirely new audience who perhaps
So
never
what's the
gave first
verdict?
game a chance. Even after 40 hours, my heart continues to grow fond of. I wouldn't hesitate to place it amongst the pantheon of Capcom's very best.
Nine. Oh, okay. So what we're looking at, we're looking at this game is a solid 9 thus far, because it was a 10. Then IGN gave it an 8. That makes it a 9, and this GameSpot gives it a 9 as well. I wonder if Eurogamer actually did they do a review? I don't want to do. I mean, this could be interesting. Could check this out. Hits. There's never been a. Let's see what this is about.
What a game.
It's dragged me away from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's how good it is.
That's saying something. Oh my gosh, I've been looking for secret
Randy
bosses
Newman.
porn.
He's made Randy Newman. 70s era Randy Newman.
70s era
And he's a
specifically.
really powerful sorcerer.
Right.
Randy Newman just destroys everything. My friend Ian, who
Get more to the point.
or wait there or go. So I was running like, come on, Cassiopeia, let's go.
I want to know more information about
Picked up
the
a member of
cooking.
my party, was clobbering.
Haven't really
I tried to
gotten
tell him,
too
"Well,
much
come
of
on,
it.
It's too strong for us, run. But I think my party member who was grabbed was trying to escape, got a bit too close to the cliff, and whilst I was running, I suddenly got level up, and I turned around and my pawn had died, but there was no sign of the ogre. So my guess is that my pawn
took the ogre off the cliff.
Took the ogre off the cliff without realizing it. The
Amazing.
ogre probably charged in a bit too excitedly, grabbed them, and then just fell.
Oh, that's great.
That's what my guess is. I lost a pawn that day. They were a great pawn, but I did get leveled up, and it wasn't Ichiban, so it's all okay.
I love those stories.
Okay.
I had a similar encounter. Like, the only time Cassiopeia has died for me was when...
This has got
Again,
new
it was getting to
new
nighttime.
footage, so
I
let's
found a
watch this.
campsite. So campsites are littered throughout the world. You can rest at them, you can cook at them. You get the really
Cool.
amazing looking meat if you cook at a
Yes.
campsite.
But can you
It's
mix
real meat, apparently.
ingredient?
We've had it confirmed. And I saw, like, across a bridge from the campsite, a bunch of goblins. I was like, I'll just take those goblins out first, and then I'll make camp. Cassiopeia's an archer, so she was like standing on the bridge, firing arrows. from
Oh,
a
this
distance.
outfit looks sick.
And whilst I was in the fight with these goblins, one of us, maybe
In
it might
fact,
even be
the
me,
the
hit
hat
the
looks
bridge
pretty
supports, and
cool.
you can collapse bridges by hitting the supports that are
Yes.
holding them up. And Cassiopeia went down with the bridge and died. And that was my route back to my campsite as well. So I couldn't get back to the campsite. Night had fallen. Cassiopeia had died. It was a bad time.
Oh, that's a bad time. I had it before where I
Oh,
was approaching a
interesting.
bridge and there were some goblins coming up, and I think one of my pawns hit it, and I thought, whoa, because literally it just collapsed right in front of me, and I was like, who did that? Who did that?
But that is a good way to maybe tackle enemies that are a little bit too powerful for you, like ogres, minotaurs. If you can lure them onto a bridge and knock out the bridge supports,
Yeah.
they go down. It's like a little cheap and cheesy way to take them out.
And then you can
I
climb
like
up the
that.
bridge as well, which I really like, because if you just find
That
a way
kind
to
of,
get down, you can climb up and so it's all
on your
good, it's all
toes,
fine at the
smart
end of the day.
thinking to take out enemies that are harder
Again,
than
this
you.
sort of leads into the next thing I want to talk about, and that is that the game,
What's that?
it doesn't hold your hand at all.
No.
Okay.
And it's really liberating, I find. Like, I've been stuck in Dragon's Dogma 2 in a way that I've not been stuck in a game for about 20 years. And I say that as a good thing. You'll get an objective, and maybe the mission is something vague like, go and check back on this town every couple of days to see how they're doing. Maybe it has to be a certain time of day for this quest to activate. Maybe you have to speak to a certain person first in a different quest to unlock a separate strand of quest. In modern games now, you'll do a quest and there's a marker on like literally everywhere you have to go. It's like, speak to this person, go here. Whereas in Dragon's Dogma 2, it doesn't do that. You sort of have to puzzle stuff out by yourself. When you do actually figure out what you have to do, you get like a really satisfying sense of having accomplished something,
Accomplishment,
having
yeah,
discovered
exactly. I was thinking
something.
that.
And there's a sense of exploration and discovery in Dragon's Dogma 2 that I've not experienced in an RPG for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's almost Dark Soulsy in that sort of way, in terms of like, you know, it rewards people who go off the beaten track and will look for extra special things, but it's a bit gentler than Dark Souls in that, you know, you're not dying every 5 minutes. It wants you to have these prolonged, rambling adventures.
See, this is what I
It's
want.
just
The
constantly
treasure
fun
hunt.
to be
I'm gonna
exploring
love
that world
doing
with
that.
your merry band
Love
of
doing
boys.
that.
Me and Randy Newman and Barry Chuckle, and tonight hopefully Ichiban as well. Like, oh, it's just so much fun. But another cool thing I wanted to say about the pawns was, you know, for example, if you hired Cassiopeia, my pawn, and you were doing a quest that I had already done with Cassiopeia, she retains that knowledge from having done the quest with me, and and she'd be able to give you like tips. So say if you're in the world and you go past a treasure chest that in my game I've opened, Cassiopeia might say to you, in a previous adventure, I found a treasure chest around here. Would you like me to guide you to it?
I've had that before, and I was like, wow, they're smart.
You can press go on the touchpad, and they will lead you to the chest. And this is like almost like a slight hand-holding system that you can turn on or off, because you don't have to go where the pawns tell
I'm
you.
always going for the treasure chests. It's one of the main things I'm going to be doing, treasure hunting.
But then occasionally,
No one said anything about the
pawn will
Sphinx
say,
or anything like a Sphinx.
I must tell my master about this. I've not discovered this before, and that also makes you feel good. She's like, ooh, I found something.
When you're exploring the open world as well, you get some pawns that are just roaming around, and then they say like, "Hello," and then they say, "Do you want to hire me?" But if they've got, that's the thing. If they've got higher stats, I'm like, "Oh, you've got really good stats." But I remember one of the first pawns I hired was, I believe they were called Corbin, and I got really attached to Corbin because he was very knowledgeable, very lovely, and the moment where I had to swap him out, I remember I did that. My boyfriend came back in the room and he was like, "Where's Corbin gone?" I was like, "Oh, I'm
He's
sorry.
been dismissed.
I'm sorry." But you can give them gifts and things as well.
Yes.
So
Oh, that's
I
nice.
give a gift, even if it's an apple. I'm like,
It's never
thank you.
goodbye. It's never goodbye. I had one pawn that I
Let me rewind that actually. That's a really
It's an apple. I'm like,
It's never.
interesting
came back in the room and he was
part
like, "Where's
point.
Corbin gone?" I was like,
because to get attached to pawns is
because he was
a
very
great point.
knowledgeable, very lovely. And the moment where I had to swap them out, I remember I
Had
did
to
that.
swap them out.
My boyfriend came back. in
Why
the room
did you
and he was
have
like,
to swap
"Where's
them
Corbin
out?
gone?"
I would like to have
Oh,
known.
I'm
He's been
sorry.
dismissed.
I'm sorry, but you can give them gifts and things as well.
Yes.
So I always have to give a gift, even if it's an apple. I'm like,
So you can't
Goodbye.
keep them
Never
for too
goodbye.
long
I
or
had
something like
one
that, I'm
pawn
guessing.
that I hated.
"Oh,
He was
really?"
just really sort of cocky. Would just run around opening treasure chests right in front of me. I was like, I
Aw.
wanted to open that. I sent them back with a rotten scrag of meat. but I love the
But
way
you still
can,
get a thumbs up.
Yeah, a thumbs up and some rotten meat. There you go. Back to your master with you. If you rest at an inn and your pawn has been on adventures with other people, you
Yeah.
get like a status report from them, and you get rewarded with rift crystals. So if someone else is using your pawn and your pawn does well, they might give you some nice items to send back. So you receive those. It's almost like an in-game trading system. This is a single-player game. You're never interacting directly with other players, but it feels like you are. It feels like you're on this co-op adventure and that everyone else is like contributing to the success of the whole. A real sort of community feeling to it.
I really like at the moment just going into the rifts and seeing what creations for pawns people have made. I saw an Aloy and I was like,
Oh, nice.
I know, I saw an Aloy and I was like, yes, that's really cool. I just love seeing the creativity behind original characters, how
Yeah.
people have made existing characters. I just love being with the pawns. They really do feel like my friends. It's sad when, you know, you say bye to some, but, you know, I'm always been more of a stats person, so they're just wonderful to venture off into the world with. I was doing a side quest where there was like a brother and you had to go find his brother who was collecting herbs, and I accidentally went on an off-beaten path because I thought the
Ooh.
brothers were going to go to town by themselves, but they didn't. And then literally you have those moments in the open world where you just hear like this crashing of a tree or like
Yeah.
this and that was when I encountered my first Cyclops, and I
Oh,
remember
nice.
thinking, oh my god, it was fantastic. The adrenaline was pumping through me. My pawns were probably not ready for the fight, but we did it anyway.
I
So
love
even
those
then,
fights.
just taking down the beasts, I love pushing them over when they're like a bit wobbly. My main tactic is get them to wobble, push them over, and
Yeah.
then go for the head where I
We've
can.
not even talked about the combat.
Well, that's kinda
As a
obvious,
warrior,
I would think.
I've got a move called springboard where one of my pawns can jump off my shield and I'll launch them into
I've given
the air.
that to Ichiban.
onto the back of an enemy. It's
Well, I know it's gonna be
find yourself
really.
flying around. You literally can just do
It's gonna be really
press
fun
R2 to grab onto the enemy.
when you encounter the Cyclops with the helmet that actually covers their eye and protects their head a little bit. But what's fun about that is if you've got a pawn that is really good at climbing, you can climb up to the head and pry off the helmet. It takes a while, but once you pry off that helmet, it is worth it.
Was just on the back of this ogre. It was like flailing around trying to knock me off, and I was just like stabbing it in the back. Randy Newman was casting thunderbolts at it. Oh, it was amazing.
It feels very Shadow of the Colossus
Yeah.
when you're climbing up all of these giant creatures
But
and things.
funnier, less sad and melancholy,
Yeah.
more just funny and exciting. And I will kill this flipping thing.
I will get it. I like it when you're stumbling around a bit as well, and then all of your pawns run up and be like, "Arisen, it's okay," and they
Yeah.
heal you immediately. I love how they take care of you so much.
When I'm fighting harpies, I always get put to sleep.
Yeah.
And as soon as you fall asleep, they're like, "The Arisen has fallen asleep," and they'll have,
Nudge, nudge, nudge,
again,
nudge.
I had Barry chuckle like, "Come on, get up!" And they'll be like harpies grabbing other people by the shoulders and flying off with them. You're like, "No!" I'll do my aerial strike to try and bring them down. It's
Damn, that looks
so wonderfully
scary
chaotic
high.
in those moments. I've never been so just completely entertained by a game in so long. Like I've just not been able to put it down since
It's
I
like
started playing.
Which makes me think as well as to the main stats of my character that I'm gonna work on first. It's gonna be I think it's the stamina that affects how well you grab onto the enemies. So that will be definitely a thing. Might just be stamina, actually. Might just be stamina will be the number one. And then the damage will come, but you can offset that by getting powerful weapons. So if your damage or power is low, but you got powerful weapons, there's the offset. Or you could do it the other way around, have a powerful character and somewhat powerful weapons. Either way, if your character is weak but you got a really powerful set of daggers, then that's like the balance. But leading to the end game, or just throughout the game, getting it so that you are powerful and your weapons are powerful in unison, then you're up. That is the key. Because as I say all the time, whenever I'm gaming in these types of games, adventure games, my primal goal, first plan of action, which leads throughout the playthrough, is how quickly I can make my characters OP, overpowered, as soon as possible, so that it makes a hard game from the start easy going forward.
Every time you boot.
So I might be battling against enemy types that I shouldn't be in the early stages, just to loot them for loot that I shouldn't have, because I'm underpowered and very weak in the early stages of the game.
Up, it's guaranteed a new experience. You're running around a city and then NPCs just give you a quest, the conversations you have, the things you'll find. There are like collectibles which are really hard to find
Collectibles,
in the open
yeah.
world. I found 2 of them so far.
So Seeker tokens.
Yes,
yeah,
that's the one.
I've got 2 of those as well.
I got 2 of them.
And there's like 240 odd, I
Yeah.
think.
Whoa.
So it's really encouraging to sort of like look far and wide as well. Another thing I want to touch on just before we wrap up is the vocations, because you can choose between 4 when you start off. So you've got fighter, archer, mage and thief.
Yes.
But more unlock as you progress, and when you get to a
Oh, that looks sick.
Typically find these in settlements. you can spend discipline points, which you earn through battle, to unlock other vocations. So if you start as a fighter, you can switch to any of the other vocations, and you can unlock special secret ones as well. There's a vocation I've just unlocked, which is like a spear/magic wielder, which is an Arisen only vocation. So only the Arisen can be this vocation, which I'm really excited to try out tonight. It's just this layers and layers of depth that just keep unraveling as you go through it, and just that sense of adventure is so good. The bond you form with your pawns, despite the fact that quite a lot of them are, you know, there's a mixture of really seriously created pawns, like a really well-made Aloy fighting next to Barry Chuckle from the Chuckle Brothers. Like, it's just, no other game could you get this. It's just, it's so joyous and fantastic to explore.
Yeah.
I've been absolutely loving it. So please do hire Ichiban and Cassiopeia when you pick up Dragon's Dogma 2 on the 22nd of March, and send them back with nice gifts, okay? I want some gold ore, I want some health potions, no rotten meat.
I just want
lots
you to
of hearts.
Just take care of Ichiban for me.
Is that it?
Go on a quest with him, make sure he doesn't die, and and then if he
Are
does
they
have
gonna
to
show
leave, give him
anything
a nice
else?
present.
No.
Make sure
All right. That was good. That was good. Interesting. Oh, Dragon's Dogma 2 review a Sanctum Dream. Oh, let's check this out.
Heard about Eats and Beats? The supper club that combines food and music. They got a go.
So far, this, as the first audit of reviews, has been going pretty well. Slow start, but good nonetheless.
Diving into the intricate universe of Dragon's Dogma 2, Capcom's latest addition to the action RPG genre presents a challenge that is both broad in scope and rich in detail. The task of
It is
an
good.
expansive adventure with
Right, let's just get to the point more.
focused on exploration and character growth. The vastness of Dragon's Dogma 2 is its most compelling feature, with a map that teems with secrets, challenges, and a dynamic day and night cycle that adds a layer of realism to the exploration. This sense of discovery is further enhanced by intuitive, fast travel
Oh, I
options,
definitely
which
want to.
cleverly
I want to see the
mitigate any
outfits.
potential redundancy, ensuring the adventure remains engaging and accessible. The game's exploration aspects is a testament to its design, offering players a rewarding experience that feels vast and intimately detailed. At the heart of the gameplay experience is the pawn system, a novel feature that allows players to summon beings known as pawns to aid in their quest. This system adds a strategic layer to the game,
That rock
but also
didn't do anything.
introduces a degree of separation between the player and their companions. The impermanent nature of support pawns and their repetitive dialogue can detract from forming a deeper connection with these characters. Despite this, the pawns occasionally offer valuable insights and assist in navigating the game's challenges, even if they lack the individuality and depth of more developed characters. The combat system in Dragon's Dogma 2 is where the game truly excels, offering a level of depth and flexibility that is rare in this genre.
No, the damn thing's been awoken. You but fell that fiend, even at the cost of your lives.
I feel like this happened. I feel. Oh, this is where they all turn into stone. Okay, I thought I'd seen that before.
Combat styles, facilitating a highly personalized approach to the game's challenges. This system encourages experimentation and personalization, making combat a richly rewarding experience. The game's focus
Right.
on player choice and flexibility is one of its standout features, providing a Dogma 2's approach to game design is ambitious. It blends traditional RPG elements with innovative gameplay mechanics that set apart from its peers. Exploration is not just about traversing a vast map, but uncovering the secrets
Oh,
and stories
interesting.
embedded within the world, making each discovery feel earned and impactful.
Right, so what have we got here? We got Ironclad Staff, which costs 1,450 gold. That's something that he could afford. Doesn't. Okay, here's the stats on there. Strength. This is what I was saying. You could have a weak. Your character could be weak, but you could afford a weapon that's really powerful. Which is why I think I'm gonna focus, and that's if this is doable. I'll focus on the stamina and maybe speed. That's how I might do it. But then you got magic, slash, strike. Okay. Fairly affordable stuff.
The day and night cycle not only adds a visual change, but also influences gameplay, with certain challenges and enemies becoming more prominent after dark, adding a strategic layer to the player's exploration. Despite its drawbacks, the pawn system represents a unique approach to companionship in video games. It allows for a dynamic form of party management and strategic planning rarely seen in this genre. The ability to summon and command pawns, each with its own abilities and characteristics, introduces a level of gameplay customization that enhances the overall experience. Combat in Dragon's Dogma 2 is a multifaceted experience, with each vocation offering a distinct playstyle and set of abilities. This variety ensures that combat remains fresh.
Let's get more to the point.
Alongside their characters. The game demands patience and a willingness to delve in.
Oh, was he saying anything about
danger? The
the
game
cooking?
demands patience and a willingness to delve into the complexities, offering a rewarding time for those who commit to its
Does it
journey.
say anything about
Its blend of
can be
ambitious design
mixed?
and grounded adventure,
No.
Dragon's Dogma 2 stands as a compelling testament to the
Or
potential of the
combined.
genre, inviting players
That's
to
another
lose
thing
themselves in a world brimming with
Capcom like to
danger,
do in their
mystery,
games,
and
combined
opportunity,
items.
despite the occasional misstep along the way. Noisy Pixel is giving Dragon's Dogma 2 an 8 out of 10.
Ah.
Thank you for watching. Noisy Pixel.
Okay, so an 8, 9. Right now we was at 9. I definitely want this outfit for my thief character, but yeah, 9. Well, this is 6. Okay, review in progress. I might just. Oh, this is a nice short review. I might just. I'm tempted to give it an 8.5 at this point. Based on all the reviews we've seen, right now it's at an 8.5.
Whatever you feel about it by the end of the adventure, I guarantee this is a game that will be talked about for a long time. Even though it doesn't massively deviate from the first Dragon's Dogma, and at times evokes the likes of Monster Hunter and Elden Ring, it feels like a singular game.
Alright, let's see.
Overflowing with memorable moments, monumentally epic battles with sun-blotting behemoths, slapstick encounters with weaponized goblins, and the endless charm of your NPC companions. To get the negatives out of the way, aside from some strange bugs you may encounter in the game, there's the story. Despite constantly flinging flat characters and stiff dialogue at you, the story itself is a creative yarn that's so much more elaborate than it needs to be, given that much of the series' appeal comes from clambering on top of angry beasties and murdering them. Many of the main beasts are predictable, and I couldn't give a toss about any of the scripted NPCs. There's a half-hearted romance and friendship system where you can go on dates, whilst also giving and receiving gifts, but it feels dreadfully underbaked. The pawns, though, are a different matter. I would die for that. Pawns are essential in combat, letting you shore up any weaknesses inherent in your own skill set. You can give them commands like directly helping you if you're injured or unconscious or waiting in a specific spot. Pawns can even guide you on a quest, which is especially handy given how vague quest descriptions can be. Dragon's Dogma 2 expects you to figure out everything yourself, and I could not have gotten through the game without the assistance of these wonderful little helpers. There's something comforting about just hearing them chat away to each other too, or share bits of gossip about their other.
It's not really saying anything new, but I'm curious about the verdict. Whatever this verdict is going to determine where we're really at.
Is vast. There's plenty of other RPGs blessed. For Monster, it's a new opportunity to experiment, and the ease with which you can switch vocations and recruit new pawns means the party
Oh, that was sick.
changing. Yes, it's janky. Yes, it's absolutely
9, basically. That's 90.
bugs, and even
So right now we're sitting at
because of some
Dragon's Dogma at a 9 out of 10.
Do I love
Legit.
a weird, ambitious RPG? Obviously, Capcom hasn't just made the same game again. The quests are more impactful, if wonky. The world is bigger, the combat more elaborate, and there is some welcome quality of life features. But really,
Right, we got what we needed from that. Dragon's Dogma 2 review. A masterclass in open world. 8 minutes. Let's do it.
I'm going to start this off by saying that Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the most memorable open world action RPGs.
Okay, just get to
These timed quests
the meat
game,
of
and I absolutely
thing.
love that. The combat in Dragon's Dogma 2 is amazing. You have a whole bunch of different vocations, which are classes if you're unfamiliar with the vocation system. You can start off as a fighter, a mage, a rogue, or an archer, and you'll unlock more vocations as you go.
Now we're getting to see some of the outfits actually.
You'll unlock them. You can start off as a fighter, a mage, which are classes.
Right, let's see.
Vocation system.
Alright, so that's the mage and it's got fur on the shoulders. Cool. Mage uses this. Okay. View augments. Vocation max. Alright.
You can start off as a fighter, a mage, a rogue.
So that's got so do they all have fur on the shoulders? Or just different versions of the fur on the shoulders based on...
Switch between these at any point in time.
Damn, I would have liked to have seen the Trickster one.
So you can technically play through any class in the game if you want to. Also, having the ability to climb on top of monsters and defeat them in different ways is really cool. Adds a lot of variety to the game that I really, really enjoyed. As you fight these monsters, you also see that they get weakened. They'll start fighting you in different ways. They'll become more aggressive or weakened and start falling to the ground. It's kind of reminiscent of a Monster Hunter game in that respect, although we actually have a health bar to see how much damage we're doing, which is nice for those people that played Monster Hunter before, but always complained about not having health bars. But the real interesting thing about Dragon's Dogma 2 is your party system. You have a pawn, which you can fully create for yourself, and then you can have 2 other pawns that you acquire from other players that are playing the game. You go into a rift and you can recruit these.
So it's a
They will
team
not
of
level
4,
up with you
like in
with
Dragon's
pawns, so you
Dogma
will have to
1.
recruit
However,
other player pawns throughout your
I want to
As you
know
level up, you're going to want to get higher level pawns. These were going to come with
if you
all of the
can
equipment that
somehow
they've been equipped with
use your
from
other
their
pawns
actual player character in another realm. But what's
that you've
interesting
created.
about this is these
I mean, we
pawns
created
gain
5 of them.
knowledge from other players. So they'll actually talk to you as you're exploring the world. They'll direct you to chests.
This is some good
caves, and other points of
footage.
interest that you might not have found already, and they'll even lead you to them if you want them to. This is a way for you to actually kind of have this real party system inside of the game with these AI characters that will direct you to different points of
Okay, we already know about
the
that.
graphical side of it in some of these more buggier conversations, or a more in-depth world that we really want to explore, discover the stories of these NPCs. So while it can be a little weird to see a character facing a wall, talking with his eyes looking like it wants to steal your... The way that the world interacts with you can be pretty overwhelming at times. I saw a golem for the first time and I was really hesitant to fight it, but it didn't seem like there was any other danger. I just rested, so I engaged this golem and instantly there's 5 other creatures coming in to attack and a griffin flies out of the sky. So not only do I have to deal with a griffin that I've never killed before, I have to fight a golem that I've never
Oh
killed,
damn!
and a bunch
You
of
was
other
able to
creatures at
freeze it.
once. Dealing
That's
with my
it.
pawns being picked up and thrown by the griffin, the golem stomping and destroying everything, and it really creates these crazy interactions in the game that you just don't find in other games nowadays. And the sheer freedom that you get to explore the world as you see fit without having everything spoiled for you like Ubisoft games do nowadays, which I love Ubisoft games, but the way that these developers have kind of progressed into showing you so much on the map, your quest log being overflowing at all times with things that you really don't care about, all of these stupid fetch quests, a lot of those nightmares are gone in Dragon's Dogma 2. And it allows you to immerse yourself into the world, and that is
Is he gonna get it? Oh, he got the golem.
developers really start taking into the future.
Now, while I've played about 70 hours of Dragon's Dogma 2, I will be live streaming this with a fresh playthrough, and I've actually avoided most of the story as well because I really wanted to have as much of a fresh look for it for live.
But what verdict do you give it? If it's a 9, then this game looks like it is sitting at a 9 solid. So let's see.
And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Now, I'll be doing tons of tutorials if you're going to be getting into curiosity. Almost never ends with this. And if it wasn't for some of the glitchier NPCs, the uncanny valley of some of the faces, this game,
get to the
and
point.
A major thank you to Capcom for providing me early access to be able to play and review Dragon's Dogma for all of you. And I really do hope you all join me for my Dragon's Dogma 2 live streams, as well as tutorial videos that I'll be releasing.
I don't think he gave it a verdict. Let's see if we can do one more. Dragon's Dogma 2 is the best game ever. Is this a review? And that will end.
Should you be playing Dragon's Dogma 2? Is the game worth it? And should you be putting out that $60 from your wallet in order to purchase this game? And honestly speaking, from my experience, I've been playing plenty of open world RPG games, and that's basically what this entire channel is focused around. And never once in my entire huge towns that you can explore, which is filled with NPCs and a lot of side activities.
Did they give a verdict?
Just a couple of seconds to like this video would reply to as many of you guys as I possibly can. And with the being said, if you guys did enjoy this video,
nah. Trying to see if there's any other reviews. I might look up Eurogamer. Usually, I mean, they would have a review out, and if they do, that'll be the end of this stream. Oh, come on. Alright, so
and I have a feast, nay, a banquet.
Did they do a review? SWAT 2. That's quite interesting. I don't think they've done a review.
And I have a feast, nay, a
let's see. Let's go all the way back up. Back up. And Game Rats. Yeah, we'll end with this.
Did you know that the vast majority of self-published books don't sell more than a few copies? It's because...
Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Just a few years ago, I'd have told you this isn't going to happen, but it's here, I'm playing it, it's Dragon's Dogma 2, against all odds.
Alright, yes, now let's get to the point.
But in Dragon's Dogma 2, there's other ways of getting past.
Okay, it doesn't look like this is new footage.
You see in a game that is on this scale. There's multiple but that usually just boils down to taking
Here we
you to
go.
a specific place, and I mean, that's it. This can be extremely helpful during certain quests, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to explain any fine details of anything for you. There's also an oracle who's about equally as helpful, and when I say that, what I mean is not that helpful. On the subject of pawns, yes, they're better than they were in the first game, and yes, they don't talk as much. They still talk too much and repeat certain lines a lot, like, do you really need to point out that same ladder every time I pass by it? I don't think you do. But overall, again, they talk a lot less and act more intelligently in battle. Pawns are what make combat in Dragon's Dogma feel unlike any other RPG. Because you're rolling with a team of 3 AI assistants that can only be given 4 vague commands like come here and help, which might make them sound kind of worthless, but if you built a solid team, they can practically win battles for you. You can obtain pawns from these rift stones. There's one main pawn you design yourself, and then you can bring along 2 guest pawns, which are the ones you obtain by using rift stones and spending in-game currency called rift crystals.
Right.
Pawns on your own level are always free, but higher level pawns cost more, and depending on your
let's get
checklist,
more to the
you're
point.
doing things because you want to do them. At least that's what I assume. Maybe there's something wrong with you. I don't know. But yeah, and there's tons of cool stuff to find. I haven't played a game that rewards your curiosity like this since Elden Ring. Like, there's some really, really crazy stuff tucked away in the corners of this world. And yeah, while you're wandering around, you are going to deal with a pretty constant onslaught of enemies. Mostly some combination of wolves, goblins, bandits, harpies, with a random giant monster thrown in a good measure like a cyclops or a griffin. The world is just dense with enemies and ambushes, so it can get a little exhausting after a while. I'm not going to say it can't. It'd be a bigger issue if the combat wasn't so damn good. And make no mistake, it's very good. No matter whether you're playing as a warrior, an archer, a thief, a mage, or one of the more exotic hybrid classes, you're going to have a ton of tools to work with. Every class has a few basic attacks, but the many special moves you can unlock really change how your character works. As you rank...
Alright, just want to get more to the point, really.
For a while. I'm playing it on PS5, and while the visuals are excellent for the console, the frame rate isn't quite there. If you're on the wilderness, it mostly stays above 30.
Don't care about the frame rate stuff.
Ledge or NPCs shuffling into place or awkwardly facing the wrong direction to talk during a quest or something, but that doesn't mean it's not working right. That's just a little bit of that jank. I kind of expected that. Bugs and jank are different things. And there were parts of the game where I thought maybe like a trigger was missing, maybe a real bug, but wrong. That was just me being dumb. I'm just so used to RPGs hand-holding you through quests that when a game makes me figure it out, it feels wrong, which I guess is kind of really sad, actually. But it's also, it makes me really happy that this game trusts me. I don't know. There's something about that that makes me like it more, even though it might be a little bit more frustrating. I do think that is going to cause some people not necessarily to jive with the game. It does expect a lot out of you. Like I said, I like that, but not everybody is going to. Many things are
So
not
sounds
explained,
good
or
to
just
me.
expect you to experiment to figure it out. And the actual main plot isn't super interesting, at least
Don't
first.
care.
It eventually goes to some pretty wild places. But that first dozen or so hours, there's not a really large amount of attempt of getting you invested. It's one of those games that's so confident in what it is that it doesn't even try to rope in new players. And to me, that's just, it's so good. The lack of tutorials, the straightforward opening, the unmarked secrets, open-ended quests. It expects a lot from the player. It trusts the player to be able to do those things. And if you're willing to go with it, there's a whole lot of fun to be had here. They did not dumb it down to capture a wider audience. It's a game that's unlike almost every other open-world game out there.
Are we going to get a
And while
verdict,
there are some
though?
boring
Are
and
we
awkward
going to get
moments,
a
it's overall a
verdict?
game that I would highly recommend, because when you figure it out, you're like, thank you, Capcom, for letting me do it. I did it. Thank you. It's an excellent game overall. But what the hell
Okay.
is going on with the generic fantasy music over the title screen? What the hell is that? I don't understand that. Maybe you do?
So his verdict was that it is an excellent game. So overall, from this, from this audit, I'd say overall, it's a 9 out of 10. And from what I've seen, it's pretty much a 9 out of 10, if not a 10. So, yeah, we are only 2 days away, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. If you're watching this video back, you can leave your comments on what you're most excited about in this game, if you're getting the game, and what vocations you're going to be using, as well as what your journey is going to be like in the game. Because as I've mentioned before, mine is pretty much going to be do that, yeah. Mine is pretty much going to be, let's go through it. I'll use my created characters as a reference guide to what I'm actually going to be doing when the game launches. Okay, so I'm going to start with my first main pawn, which is female thief right here. Okay. And I made another one, which is myself as an archer, so that'll be like on a separate or different playthrough altogether. Same thing with Kim Kardashian. But yeah, all focus is gonna be on my first main female pawn. It's gonna be a thief, and I'm going to team her up with another female, M, which is gonna be a mage. Now I would love for the mage to combine with another mage to do their combined sorcery type spells later on in the game. That's the goal with that. And with my archer class, I'm going to combine myself with Levi Ackerman, who will be a thief. And then I got these other ones as backups, essentially. Wednesday Adams, Battle Beast, and Chance the cat. Now, in the game, let's get a screenshot up instead for now. So in the game, Jesus. Yeah, so again, it's very simple. Gonna be treasure hunting early to get as much loot as possible to afford the particulars, items and things that I need. I'm gonna be being very careful, go up against enemies early that are above my level, in the hopes to overpower my character early on. I'll also be at some point making a valiant effort to find a Sphinx, and that's gonna take a while because from what I've read or seen, you only get one chance at it when you find it. So I definitely have to be overpowered then. What else? So yeah, having a focus on the treasure hunting and leveling up my character, and also if I can purchase an inn. Whatever the most valuable things are is what I'm aiming to save my gold and loot on. I pre-ordered the game as well, so I will be getting these golden blades, so that's pretty dope, which means I'm gonna be looking for an outfit that's all black, and then I just have the golden blades since I'm using an archer and a thief, and the same thing with an archer. So that's gonna be really cool. And yeah, just have fun and enjoy the game. That is what I am looking forward to. So I'll catch you all later. Follow the channels, subscribe to the channels, twitch.tv/CaviarZaddy as well, live streaming right now on the dual stream, and like, comment, share on the YouTube video. Peace out.